Hello, I'm Toby Fox from 1.5 million new homes, the local government challenge sponsored by Redloft. So the mission is to get 1.5 million new homes built, and the key delivery arm for that mission is local government, either as the planning authority or as a partner in a joint venture with the private sector, or through the direct delivery of new homes. So I'm visiting a different council every month to understand what works and what needs to change for councils to get more homes built. And today I'm in the London Borough of Lambeth. So I'm here with Nabil Khan, who is the Corporate Director for Climate and Inclusive Growth at London Borough of Lambeth. Nabil, tell us a bit about where we are and what the potential for this scheme is, because we want to dig into the ingredients for the successful delivery of new homes.
Absolutely. So thanks, Toby. So we're standing here today in front of Brixton House, which was phase one of our Summer Leighton Road development scheme. We'll talk about phase two in a minute, which is going to include 363 new homes coming forward. But just to dwell on this at the moment, this was the first new theatre in London for over 50 years when we completed the scheme. And alongside the theatre, actually, we also completed Carlton Mansions, which is, I think, 26 affordable workspace units, which the creative economy in Lambeth, in Brixton, are particularly benefiting from. So this was very much phase one, and it was about the workspace, the creative economy, the culture. Phase two is all about new homes. Currently, we're going through a process with our development partners, who we procured last year, so Higgins Group, and we're really delighted to be able to sort of have 54% affordable housing as part of the scheme.
54%.
54%. Yep. It's going to be a net zero development, so it ticks all of our boxes really. And also, there's going to be a number of extra care facilities in there, which really helps us with some of our more vulnerable residents who are seeking accommodation that's got obviously adaptability measures built in. So all of that taken together is a really, really good overall scheme, which will really build on the first phase, the cultural space and the affordable workspace element.
So we're standing in front of, clearly, a building site, no houses on it. You're going to put hundreds of new homes on here, Nabil. When you've done that, how do you know that you've got a successful scheme? What constitutes success for you?
I think the first thing I would say is, I mentioned that it's going to be a net zero development. I mentioned the extra care facilities. I mentioned the high percentage of affordable. Those things are absolutely critical for us. And the development partner that we were seeking really needed to understand that those were sort of non-negotiables for us. And it needs to speak to the sort of priorities of the community around here. Now, it is across the road from the Moorlands estate, which we've already mentioned, so it needs to fit in. It needs to be sympathetic from a design perspective to what's around it. And I think this one's an interesting site, because obviously in the past, for phase one, this served as a site office for that. And at the moment, actually, in terms of some meanwhile use, it's being used as storage space for the Brixton House Theatre. So, we're really keen to sort of really maximise the benefits for our community, and that seeking a development partner and seeking investors who really understand that is going to be our sort of driving priority is critical, and that I would put as the key foundation of success.
How do you go about actually achieving that? What's the role of the council on this? Because achieving net zero, achieving well over 50% affordable housing in this current financial climate, that's not easy. How have you managed it?
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. I think it's an attractive site, is the first thing to say. I think we do benefit from high land values. We have to be honest about that. So I often hear about the housing market as a sort of general term, but I think we have to be clear that there are different housing markets in different parts of London. So what works in inner London, Lambeth, may not necessarily work in Barking and Dagenham. And that's the sort of, having those honest conversations with partners is very helpful to start off with. And so you all start from the same foot. There are trade-offs involved. Have to be clear about that. There are trade-offs involved, and that happens on both sides. And that's where a negotiation can be really helpful, actually, because if you're going into it with trust and with honesty, then you're able to have some of those. These are our red lines. Those are your red lines. Where can we meet in the middle? How can we compromise? And that's really helpful as well. In terms of, there's always a creative tension, the way I see it, between particularly our in-house housing team and our planning team, I would say. So for the land that we own and the homes that we're bringing forward, I'm a fan actually of having that creative tension, because they both push each other for the best possible outcome for our residents. So obviously planning, quasi-judicial function, needs to ensure that anything that comes forward is in line and meets our heritage concerns, meets our sustainability standards, etc., etc. But our housing delivery team, our in-house housing delivery team, are great at pushing the boundaries and actually saying, yeah, but we can do more. We can do more with this, and let's densify. And I think that sort of relationship has been really interesting to observe for me actually, and that's helped. That's helped because it means internally we're able to have some of those difficult discussions before we even go out to market and speak to our partners and potential investors.
And speaking of the partners, what's the nature of the partnership? Have you retained a level of control in that agreement?
Yes. So it's a development agreement, so there will be conditions attached to it, and those conditions need to be satisfied before we sort of clear the hurdle rate. And then of course there is still planning as well, and we've got our role as the LPA, the local planning authority, and that is separate from the development agreement. So there's those two sort of mechanisms are the primary mechanisms for us to retain control and ensure that the scheme that finally gets built here meets the sort of outcomes that we set out from the start.
Normally in these segments, I'm standing in front of a completed scheme, and one of the questions I like to ask is if you could start again, what would you do differently? What have you learned? What have you learned from other schemes that you've been involved in Lambeth that you have delivered? What's the learning that you take from those that you want to make sure that you make use of here?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. Firstly, the importance of partnership. I know that's quite a throwaway statement to make, but it's absolutely critical in these schemes, which are long-term projects. The way me and the team sort of approach our housing delivery function and role is we are the sort of long-term custodians of place, really, and so we take a long-term view, and we're going to be here and the council's going to be here for a long time, and the residents are going to be here for even longer. So we need to have that sort of long-term view, and aligning that with our partners from the offset is absolutely critical. So all partners that come to Lambeth and work with us will take that long-term view, and that really helps in setting expectations. The other thing I would say is subsidy at the moment. Land values are really high in Lambeth. Build costs are really high. Inflation, all of that stuff that your audience already knows about. And so the need for public subsidy, the need to sort of get that across to just how much subsidy is required to build, particularly social homes in London at the moment. We need to be clear about that, and we need to sort of articulate that better as a sector. That's not a local council thing. That's not a local government thing. That's not a development sector thing. That's a societal thing that we need to sort of just to be very clear about the true cost of developing and delivering affordable homes, and actually the value of it. There's a difference between cost and value, and I don't think we're good enough yet at the moment to truly sort of articulate the total value of what a home means in terms of economic terms for our residents.
Well, how about having a go at that? How about trying to articulate that, Nabil?
Well, let me answer it this way. So on average, a 2-bed social rent would probably cost us roughly circa 400k to build.
Okay.
Circa 400k. Yeah. Now, over 30 years, our rent that we would receive in terms of social rent, HRA, would probably be circa 85k. So that tells you that there is a 300k subsidy gap.
Yep.
And that's what it's costing per unit. And I think when you start talking in those terms, you can really get a sense of how much subsidy is required to build affordable homes in inner London at scale, with the land values being what they are.
Absolutely. Another thing that is quite nice to unpack here, is a good opportunity to unpack it, is the process by which that grant comes in. So you're not deciding all of that now, are you? You go into partnership with a developer.
Yes.
And then the developer is going to agree the affordable homes part of the project. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, sure. So we're in a development agreement with Higgins, and they will be responsible for bringing an RP on board, and the RP will then go to the GLA and say, this is what we can deliver. And
that's a registered provider.
Of course. Sorry. That's all right. Yeah. I'm so used to dealing with acronyms all day long. Yes, registered provider, and they will be responsible for securing GLA Affordable Homes Grant for the unit. So that's the way it sort of works at the moment. We have got allocations from the GLA on Affordable Homes Grant as well, which we're using on some of our other schemes where we're building directly or contracting or asking our contractors to build directly. But that's usually how the process works.
So Nabil, this site clearly is not being used for housing at the moment, and you're not building on it yet. So what do you make of the site while it's inactive like this?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a really important question because we all know regen schemes and development schemes can take a long while. So, and we're very keen to sort of make best use of land in the interim as well as the sort of end use. And actually, at the moment, this particular building you're looking at is used as storage space for the theatre next door, which is really good. And then next door to it, we've actually helped a local business use some of that land as depot for SEND transport, so that's special education needs provision for some of our more vulnerable residents.
Oh, school buses.
School buses, indeed, yes. There's transport for them, but that's used as a depot. And then further down, if you pan across there, you'll see there's actually a meanwhile gym being used as well, which is heavily utilised by the local community. So it is about making sure that the land in the interim stage is also utilised, and it's not just sitting here derelict and growing weeds, albeit I can see a lot of weeds there.
How long has it been growing weeds?
Oh, that is a good question. Well, the whole scheme, 2017, I want to say, started. So yeah, it's been a while.
Nabil, like I'm not an expert in any of these areas. Why does it take so long?
Why does it take so long? It's a combination of obviously how difficult the development market is, land economics, needless to say, planning at times, not always. I think planning gets a bad press in London, I must say. If you look at London, planning is less of a constraint on development. It may be in other parts of the country, I don't dispute that. But in London, I think the regulatory changes is what I'm hearing from developers and investors. That's their number one concern.
So this is building safety?
This is building safety. This is building safety. And since the sort of regime change last year, only one high-rise building has actually managed to clear the scheme since then, which tells you a lot in itself. And of course, in London, we're disproportionately impacted by the number of high-rises we've got, and indeed in Lambeth as well. So the building safety regulator and some of the challenges that they're facing, I think that's a genuine concern. But the good news is I think that's being addressed at the moment. I think lobbying has been done at the highest level, and I think we will see changes there. So regulatory changes, land economics, planning, of course, subsidy. I mentioned subsidy earlier, the increasing need for subsidy, and the sort of state of the public finances at the moment as such. So I think you take all of that, and that's before, by the way, you get into construction cost inflation, before you get into the skill shortages being faced by the construction workforce. Even if we sorted out planning, even if we sorted out the funding packages, do we have the skills, do we have the workforce to actually follow through and build out all of our schemes? Question mark. So I think you take all of that, it's a systemic issue we've got, and it's increasingly important that we don't just look at this through our borough lens, but we take a sectoral, a regional, to be honest, a countrywide view of some of the challenges we're facing here.
Nabil Khan, thank you very much for your contribution to getting 1.5 million new homes built.
Thank you, Toby.
So that's it for another episode of 1.5 million new homes, the local government challenge, sponsored by Redloft. We're going to be back in a few days with more from the London Borough of Lambeth. But until then, if you like what we're doing, please let us know through clicking like or subscribe. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for watching.